I think I came a little more prepared this time. Let's see what happens. This window capture is visible to you guys. And hopefully large enough, and then we'll get the sound check. And it's nominal at this present time. I'm going to turn all my gain rates up, make sure everything is nominal. And then we'll check. It sounds a little quieter. I'm not sure why yet. It's 9 decibels, so we're at normal. Everything should be okay. All right. So far our little requester files read through has been a very interesting and I think just useful thing to do for the record, you know. These situations, these crimes are just not getting covered to the extent that I think they should be here on YouTube. And there have been a couple of podcasts of people over time that have talked ons with you guys, but nobody has really read through the Quester files yet that I can find. And so because of the fact that there's 50 entries on the Quester files for the EAR phase, we're just going to skip that. And we'll jump into the heavy shit that starts up in Goleta, as we have been doing. And really I started with Sanchez Domingo, which is not chronologically accurate. And so, in fact, it's almost as far from chronologically accurate as you can get. You know, being the second to last ONS crime and all. But then I went back through the process and we started on Offerman Manning. And that's actually the beginning of all of this. So in keeping with that sequence of chronological faithfulness, we started at Offerman Manning, and we are now going to proceed into Charlene and Lyman Smith. I want to point out for people, before we get started on the Quester read-through aspect of this, that you can find the YouTube channel of the daughter of Lyman Smith. It is called The Lawyer's Daughter, and it's run by Jen Carroll. Jen Carroll is Lyman Smith's daughter. I didn't realize that when I discovered her channel, and I don't remember how I got there. It was one night. We were in our little fortress of drugs in Aliso Viejo, and my wife was asleep, and I was listening to 122675, and then I kind of had my, you know, my opinions of 122675 kind of shifted as that went on, and I know that Murder Inc. won't agree with me on that, but that's okay. And at some point, I was looking into, I believe they're the Rockfield burglaries, and well, actually, I wasn't looking at that specifically, but they came up. I was looking into just Visalia Ransacker, and then I think some of the Placer County homicides kind of came up, and then just down the rabbit hole I went until I stumbled upon this channel called The Lawyer's Daughter. And she was talking about Joe D'Angelo and just kind of talking about him. And I was like, who is this weird lady? You know, and I was just listening to her channel. I was like, this lady's a little weird. And wasn't too thrilled at first. And then I found a video that she made called I Was a Suspect in the Murder of Lyman Smith. And I didn't know what the nature of that video was going to be at all. But obviously, if you're an Earons researcher and you see something like that, you're like, oh my god, what is this? And so you click on it. And I was listening to this thing. And it wasn't only a few minutes in, I started going, is this lady Lyman Smith's daughter? And it turns out she is. And so my whole perspective of everything changed on Jen Carroll. And, you know, it kind of added a lot of legitimacy to everything that she said, really. And even though it wasn't until 2001, I don't think, that it was known to be Earons that did this crime. No, I think these crimes were linked together as ONS in like 96 or 97 or something. And so she found out in the 90s, I believe, that her dad had been killed by a serial killer. And then as that narrative began to develop into what we now understand as the Earons case, In 2001, EAR crimes were linked to ONS crimes, and then that, of course, was the birth of the whole, situation there. So if anyone wants to hear Jen Carroll's account of the Ventura murders, highly recommend this channel. It's called The Lawyer's Daughter. I don't think she's uploaded for a couple years, but if you really need some insight from someone who was just about as there as you can be, then go over to that channel and check that out. She was actually interrogated by police. They lie detected her, or they did a lie detector test, a polygraph on her. They considered her a suspect in these murders for some period of time. And then I guess that focus sort of shifted, and we're going to go into the prime suspect for the Charlene and Lyman Smith murders as this article progresses, because Quester is going to tell us about it. So, let's see if I can maybe make this a little bigger. Maybe we can kind of look past this whole live from a spinning ball thing and give you just a little more resolution on that. And then we'll kind of block Joe D'Angelo too, because he's a dirtbag. Okay. Getting started. Offense, 261 rape / 187 murder. Okay, again, 187, not really. These are all of these crimes, guys, are murder with special circumstances. This is important to understand the difference. All of these crimes, now I don't know how they were charged. They might have been charged as 187s, in which case, blah, 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 whatever, But ultimately, if you look at the definition of the murder with special circumstances, it includes almost everything. Like lying in wait will automatically get you a death penalty qualification in your crime. And we know that Iran's definitely was lying in wait on these crimes. Other aspects too. I think that, but we'll just look past that. We've been looking past it every time. Eventually, I'm going to stop mentioning it, hopefully, as we go through this. But the address is High Point Drive. I don't know the address of this house. It's available online if you guys need to know the address of the Ventura murders. You can find that information out. I just have never found that information out, and Jen Carroll would know because that was her dad's house. Date is March 13th, 1980, and I don't know why he does this whole incident and then he gives it a name. It's weird. And then we'll just ignore all this other stuff. Okay. Let's get started. Is anyone here? Murder Inc.'s probably here. Murder Inc. is here religiously, which is cool. So. The newspapers didn't cover it well. To read them is to find no link whatsoever to the events in Goleta. The papers said the coroner was confused as to when the couple was even bound. Were they tied after death? There was no struggle, readers were told. The couple merely lay peacefully in bed under the covers. The killer had taken a log from the pile outside the bedroom on the patio, entered, and stood over them. Then he hit the man, Lyman Smith, once on the head and killed him. Then he hit his young wife, Charlene, on the head and killed her. Ronald Kornblum, the coroner, even checked their adrenal glands in the autopsy. They were normal. The theory was if they were under stress before they died, their adrenals would have poured out their hormones and shrunk. But adrenals vary in size person to person, Kornblum reminded us, so it was hard to say. So what was it then? Did someone merely walk in and bludgeon them as they slept and then tie them up afterward? No. The sheriffs and everybody else thus wondered, could their murderer have known them? Charlene was a vivacious, slightly femme fatale figure, less charitably, perhaps, a cut-rate gold digger. The papers noted that she was Lyman Smith's, quote, attractive wife. No one who saw her would not think that. She was indeed a lovely woman. She went from being Lyman's secretary to his second wife. She was on the fringes of Bohemia and wanted much more. She sold jewelry at a fashionable Tupperware-type parties. Her own personal jewelry was far superior. She was also an interior decorator. Their High Point house was immaculate and elegant, though the furniture was imitation. So I don't really know why all this stuff is even brought up. What's up with this case where, every time someone dies, someone is like, well, yes, but let's libel the victims real fast. It's like, can you stop? They could have been Hitler. It's like, who cares? Murder's murder, man. No detective, therefore, could ignore the symbolism in her death. See, what does all this stuff even matter? What? Who cares if what she, You don't even know that for sure anyway. That's just made up. Her wrists had been tied with an elaborate knot known as a lanyard by sailors and as a diamond or Chinese decorator knot by landlubbers. Okay, guys, here we go. This is where it all gets started. The diamond knot bullshit. There are people that fucking were calling him the diamond knot killer. There were people that were saying that the EAR tied diamond knots and that was his supposed signature calling card. No, it is not. The diamond knot was only ever used one time in this case. This is the only time it was used, and he didn't even tie it. Someone else says, well, there was a diamond knot in an EAR raid. Maybe. Maybe that's true. But this guy, he did not tie that knot, okay? We're going to keep going. It is an uncommon and quite complex knot. What odd symbolism. Seeing this always disturbing to investigators. Oh, seeing this is always disturbing to investigators. I was like, what the fuck? Seeing a fashionable and socially attractive interior decorator tied with a decorative knot says much. It's like finding a stripper choked with her own G-string. The symbolism is obvious. This symbolism says much. Only if it's tied by the offender. Only. Look, guys, if you break into the house of an interior decorator and you find a diamond knot, what were you expecting to find? Right? Maybe there's no... Okay, look. He says it right here. EAR never did this. Yeah, because he also didn't do it here. This was on the curtains already. He liked to drag out the terror in his victims, feeding off their fear, breathing it in like it was oxygen to him. He didn't kill quickly. He didn't leave symbolism. He didn't know his victims. Few had reasons to connect this crime to Goleta, and all of them to EAR, the Northern California rapist. Okay. I don't know, man. Kill quickly. What does that mean? Like, how do you measure... I get that there's some cases where you can easily measure that something is a slow kill, right? But, like, let's not get into that, because we try to quantify the amount of time that it was taken to kill them. I think that this is a very aggressive, very violent offender, and sometimes when D'Angelo killed people, he just killed them, and it was quite quick, because he... Like, for example, Lyman Smith was hit one time. So, and you don't know what happened before that murder, so... If you look up here, like he was saying, if you go up here, did someone merely walk in and bludgeon them as they slept and tie them up after? You don't even know what happened. No one knows what happened, because no one is alive. But we're going to talk about the bark at the bedside later on. Okay. Then there was the fact that Lyman Smith was a very well-known attorney in Santa Paula. He was now being considered for an appointment to the Superior Court as a judge. Attorneys make enemies, and one soon to be a judge, for he was quite favored for the position, might incite an old enemy to even the score. Lyman also liked oddball investments. They were in their way get-rich schemes. He had been a principal in a land development company called GAP. The letters coming from the three principal holders. The A came from Lyman's old buddy, Joe Alsip. We're going to get into a lot of Alsip here. Lyman was later part owner of some Maverick International Airlines that shipped pregnant cows to the Shah of Iran. These types of businesses bring one in contact with lots of unsavory characters. Added to the other clues, it seemed like the Smiths killer knew them. So, what we're seeing here again is just more and more shoddy detective work. Look what happens. Like, let me explain something to you guys, okay? If you dig into the past of everyone who gets killed, you're going to find a bunch of things that happened that were... conflict type events. It's just the nature of humankind. Okay? Every single person that gets killed has eventually at one point had a dispute with someone else. And bad detectives, essentially, they're bad detectives. Look what we're going to talk about also. Bad detectives are going to look at all those disputes and go, well, they must be connected. Added to the other clues, and it seemed the Smiths killer knew them. Well, he didn't. Okay? And indeed, Ventura County finally settled on his former business partner, Joe Alsip. Okay, so bad detective work, like I was just saying. These people are terrible fucking detectives. Lyman had parted with the company at the right time, getting his payoff a new piece of property that was accruing in value. GAP was ruined, and Alsip's remaining holdings were quaking the U-joint. At the pre-trial, the details of the murder came out. It shocked people to know the truth about this socially popular couple. Maybe we need to stop telling people those things because they take them and they run with them as if they're relevant. It's so annoying. It's like how Darlene Ferrin gets murdered by the Zodiac at random. And everybody goes, well, yeah, but she was hoeing around with everyone. It's like, can you not? Let's start at the beginning and then go back and lay some foundation. And guys, these people are fucking terrible detectives. I know that, like, Alsip alone, I would be kind of pushing it by saying something like that. But they actually suspected his daughter of this crime. Lyman Smith's daughter, Jen Carroll. They actually polygraphed her, and she's an 18-year-old girl, and these two were bludgeoned with a fireplace log, and Charlene was raped. So, how in the fuck would an 18-year-old girl be the offender? She should have been immediately ruled out. But these morons, who are terrible detectives, just were shooting at targets in the dark. They're just going, well, fucking, by golly. It's like, it's okay to just not know sometimes, guys. You understand that? Sometimes you just don't know, and that's okay. You don't have to make shit up. It was March 16th, 1980. Lyman and Charlene Smith's High Point Drive home was normal, middle class in appearance, but it was situated on the hills overlooking Ventura and the Pacific Ocean. This gave it a lofty value along with the other homes in this otherwise average development. It was an up-and-coming subdivision. It was still peaceful and country around with long fields and vineyards leading to the distant Santa Paula Freeway. The Smiths' home overlooked a huge postmodern church. It was Steve McQueen's church to boot. Ventura isn't exactly at the core of Los Angeles society, but it rubs shoulders with it occasionally. Beyond the church were those eyesore cats, those huge power pylons we've become so used to. I'm sure the Smiths preferred to look the other way, over fields and vineyards, and then through the haze to the Pacific Ocean. The cat corridor was at an angle, passing along the edge of the fields and vineyards and crossing in the distance the Santa Paula Freeway. Little specks rushed along, a glint of the sun off their windshields. It was the typical morning traffic on a distant artery of travel. The gardeners were at work in the Smiths' yard. The place was kept immaculate. Charlene insisted on it. Appearance in this, the age of the new morality, was everything. Both she and Lyman drove big Thunderbirds. Both were parked out front. They were, for 1980, huge status symbols. Charlene likes status symbols. Here's what I want to say. Okay? I know that I'm calling these people bad detectives. These people are dumbasses. Because look at this house. I understand what I'm about to do is I'm about to nitpick with a bunch of hindsight. But the only reason that I'm doing that is because these people were such shitty detectives that they deserve it. If they weren't such shitty detectives, I would never go, oh, look at all the signs that this is the EAR, and then hold that against them like they're morons. But because they tried to railroad Joe Alsip, and they did, they used a fingerprint off of a drinking glass from inside the house to try to railroad this guy, which is horrible. And then they tried to polygraph and interrogate his 18-year-old, Lyman Smith's 18-year-old daughter as if she had something to do with the crime when Charlene Smith was raped. Dumb as fuck. So because they're so dumb, that means let's start nitpicking all the hindsight here. The house, first of all, as you can see on your screen, looks totally like an Iran's Target house, okay? I think it's single-story, detached middle-class home. It's got a large open field off to the left here. It has a little incline here where someone prowling around this house can't be seen. It has a fence off to the right here. This is like textbook EAR, okay? So these dumb fucks couldn't see the real clues in front of them because they were too distracted by the fake clues. Bad detectives. One friend said that her quest for status was all sales and no anchor. This was her third marriage and her most advantageous. Neighbors knew, however, it had been on the rocks for a while. In fact, when the announcement was made that Charlene and Lyman were dead, some of the neighbors thought they had killed each other. Lyman was quite different. I mean, at least the fucking neighbors are better detectives than the real detectives. Still bad detectives. All of these people are bad detectives, but let's make fun of them all. He was ambitious, but a silent type. He was 10 years older than Charlene, divorced with a few kids that didn't live too far away with their mom, that being Jen Carroll and her siblings and her mom. He was also well-liked. Charlene was captivating, gorgeous, vivacious, and tasteful, but Lyman was truly liked. He came up the hard way. His family moved to Sacramento, interesting, from Pocatello, Idaho, and he grew up hustling his way through high school and then college, the latter with the help of his first wife, his former high school sweetheart, Marjorie, who worked and helped pay his way. He had been married to Charlene for about 5 years now. At 28, she had already dumped her two first husbands. Lyman was a lifelong Democrat and was active in political groups and committees. Charlene's taste and gregarious personality made her a good consort in public affairs, but more so, Lyman's respectability made Charlene appear far more cultural than she truly was. Lyman was basically a good guy who was dumb about his young wife. Can we stop this libel shit? Can we just not libel victims all the time? Does anyone want to... Can we try doing that for a little bit? And people act like I'm the... Oh, New Coke season. I'm not the offensive one. And I don't think a lot of people act like that anyway. But, like, seriously, guys. You're not going to ever see me talking trash like this about the victims of these fucking... Come on, Quester. You can do better than this. Even if this shit's true... Dude, she could have been literally a red light district escort. And, like, let's not put that in the fucking article. Especially now that we know who killed her. Okay? Can we just not? They could have been selling crack. And let's not talk about that. Let's try to figure out who killed them. Or once we do figure out who killed them, in our case, we know who killed them. Let's try to clarify the narrative. So I'm tired of listening to this bullshit. The neighbors knew more was afoot. They had heard the fights. Charlene had played the field not long after the marriage. She had made a former deputy sheriff, now turned polygrapher, Richard Atwood, into her lover. Interesting that this guy's turned into a polygrapher, and we have a polygraph test being administered to Jen Carroll. Probably no connection, but interesting to point that out. She had dated him without telling him she was married. Months went by, and he finally found out. He wrote Charlene a harsh letter and delivered it personally to their High Point house. Lyman intercepted him. Atwood would not believe that this older, staid man was the husband of such a young, gregarious woman. How many times did he use that word? Lyman pulled him into the house and showed him his things just to prove it was his house. Lyman's interest in that odd air cargo business kept him away quite a bit in 1977. Charlene apparently kept up the relationship with Atwood. It was considered an open scandal. In 1978, she finally left Lyman and filed for divorce. For someone so status-minded, it was quite surprising. A successful attorney swapped out for a hunky former deputy sheriff. Lyman was in his chops over it. He wasn't the same man. He moped and was depressed. Finally, he won her back. He promised he would seek a judgeship. 2 were coming due, and Lyman would be a favored contender. Maybe Lyman really didn't want the post. Being a judge is limiting and not as profitable as being a good attorney. There were also the schemes. Honest, of course, but some of them really were in the left field. That Maverick International Airlines... I want to say one thing, guys. Whenever you see an acronym like... what's that bank one? The CIA one? What do they call it? Oh, Century International Arms. Or Maverick International Airlines. Are you seeing CIA, MIA, right? It, too, was in ruins now. Revolutions in Iran. Seizure of its cow-hauling jets. No more Shaw. No more need to ship him cattle. The company was a shambles of debt, and according to one Englishman auditor, Will Bartfield, Lyman had been skimming off the profits from the payroll withholding without the other partners knowing it. Can we... Dude. I'm reading you guys the Quester files, and so I have to read the Quester files with you guys, but, like... Is the slander going to stop anytime soon? When Bartfield confronted Lyman, he had merely pouted about it and hung his head. He and his wife were living outside their means. Okay, but who beat him to death? Well, we know that now, right? But Quester at the time of writing didn't know. Lyman had gotten the air cargo going a couple of years before with the investment of an old friend of his, Bud Sloan, an ex-heavyweight turned prosperous rancher. Sloan was now losing his investment, but he would not accept that Lyman was dishonest. He believed Lyman had fallen victim to crooks himself. In any case, Maverick was over. Lyman still had that former GAP property that was accruing in value, but there was contention there. Alsip viewed Lyman as having ruined him by wanting out. Lyman had used the excuse it was because of the judgeship coming. He needed to consolidate. His cut was still growing in value. Joe Alsip's was still tanking. Alsip could no longer afford to drive his fancy Bentley. And so this is why Ventura ended up trying to railroad Joe Alsip, because Like I said, if you dig into the past of any murder victim, you're going to find conflict. It doesn't mean they're all involved. Aside from Maverick and a nosedive, the Smiths' life seemed to be moving onward. Charlene had come back to Lyman. He was sure they had it all worked out now and the future was bright. The judgeship seemed assured. There seemed to be no stigma attached to the Smiths. This was, after all, the end of the swinging 70s, when free sex, open-mindedness, wife-swapping, and all had been done by what perhaps most people would call the not-so-grand-grandies. What the fuck? Soon the 1980s and yuppieism, with its unbridled lust for cheap status, brand-name materials, and excessive living, would be overwhelming the culture. Jeez. A different time indeed. The standard of grandeur was set by those who brought it down to their level of shallow living. Love, well, if it did exist in such a crowd, suborned itself to desire and the quest for cheap ambition. Charlene had abandoned her passionate relationship with Atwood and came back, eager for the status of being a judge's wife. And are you kidding me? How do you know that that's what happened? And Smith, much older, much more genuine, rejoiced. He was truly besotted by her. Again, Quester, you don't know what happens behind closed doors. Let's not fucking judge. Come on, you know? The fuck, man. But there was surprise this March 16th. Lyman's 12-year-old son, Gary, arrived on his bicycle to mow the lawns. Lyman came up the hard way, so he insisted his son must earn his allowance. The 12-year-old went to the door Charlene left open for the gardeners and found it strangely to be locked. Okay, so finally we're going to actually start talking about the crime. After 20 paragraphs of slandering the victims, we can finally move into libel when it's written, I guess. After 20 libelous paragraphs, let's start talking about the crime. Thanks, Quester. Had she not opened it for them, they were working about. Gary went to the front door. Surprise again. Newspapers were accumulating. For several days, they had not been picked up. He opened the door. It was unlocked. Another surprise. He went inside. Another surprise. The sofa cushions looked as if the couch had been rifled. Charlene kept things immaculate. The house was decorated old world style. It was imitation. These weren't antiques, they were modern copies. It looked old, it looked tasteful, but it was veneer. Just trashing them. Just the whole time. This is fucking wrong. Gary went down the hall and looked in the master bedroom. There were two people under the covers. He was disturbed. He had an innocent thought. He didn't want to wake his dad because what if the woman with him wasn't Charlene? In any case, he did. He pulled the sheets back, exposing his father's head and shoulders. His father lay on his stomach. Even in the dark room, it was obvious his head had been bashed in. Gary stumbled out of the room and dialed the new emergency number, 911. So this is, 911 has just come into existence, guys. This is 1980. So, in case of any of you didn't know, which I didn't know this either until Euron's case taught me, 911 is super new. Came out in 1979 or something. Or I guess maybe in 1980. Soon the police came and found Gary sitting on the porch. The detective went in. He too noticed the sofa had been rifled through. He went, okay, so let me ask you guys something, okay? These brilliant so-called detectives. If Joe Alsip or Jen Carroll killed these two, why would they rifle through the sofa? I think these detectives need to trade their shields in for something more useful to them, like maybe a hard hat and a reflector vest, because these people are brain dead. Not to call construction workers brain, I'm just saying just trade it for a more entry-level job, because these are terrible detectives. He went down the hall. The mattress in his spare bedroom was skewed as if someone had been jumping up and down on the bed. In the master bedroom, there was the shocking... Okay, so why would Jen Carroll skew the mattress in the spare bedroom? And I go, well, they didn't know what to do. They were just any suspect. It's like, yeah, but at a certain point, where do we draw the line? You know? Do we question the 12-year-old? Come on, guys. The popular couple was dead. He pulled the sheets back. Lyman was naked and lying on his stomach, his wrists and ankles bound with drapery cord. Charlene was lying on her back next to him, wearing only a t-shirt. Both had been hit in the head. The bludgeon was a wood log. It was bloody and lying between them at the foot of the bed. The wall above them was spattered with blood. Investigation would prove that the log had been taken from the pile outside the bedroom window. The master bedroom had been rummaged through. The dresser drawers had been pulled out with such force that some decorative rocks which had been inside were on the floor. When Charlene had been rolled over by Dr. Peter Speth, the assistant coroner, to be examined for evidence, the knot on her wrists immediately caught the eye. It was quite elaborate. It turned out to be a diamond knot. A rare knot used at sea or in interior decorating. Let's scroll back up and look at Charlene's situation. She's an interior decorator, isn't she? Is that what it says? A socially active interior decorator? So, let's all use our powers of logic here and figure out, where did the diamond knot come from? Was it tied by the psychopathic East Area rapist who runs around with shoelaces and simple slip knots and granny knots and shoots people in their backyard? Or is it possible that the diamond knot comes from the interior decoration of someone who's an interior decorator? Come on, guys. This is pretty simple stuff. Let's not call him the diamond knot killer. It's pretty easy logical deduction that we can do here. Where does the diamond knot come from? Did EAR tie it? Probably not. Yeah, nice. Thanks, channel. And Murdering says, being stupid is a prerequisite for cops. Oh, man. It's a shame, isn't it? Because what you're going to see in Ventura, guys... I'm going to... see, interior decorating. Okay, what you're gonna see in Ventura is a gallery of the worst detective work ever performed. You want to know how not to do a criminal investigation? Look no further than the double murder of Charlene and Lyman Smith. It turned out to be a diamond knot, a rare knot used at sea or in interior decorating with drapery or other cord. Okay, so interior decorating. So that's where the diamond knot comes from. It was not tied by the East Area rapist. That's stupid. Okay. And a murdering's gonna be, oh! There's an EAR crime! Maybe, I don't know for sure. I'm just telling you what's logical. Maybe I'm totally wrong. Maybe EAR loves diamond knots. Maybe he always ties the fancy pretzel in his knots. I don't think so. But, if I had to say what's more likely, did the diamond knot come from the drapes of an interior decorator, or did it come from the East Area rapist? I would say probably the interior decorator's drapes. Okay. Investigation would uncover that Charlene was bound with different drapery cord than that which Lyman had been secured. It had copper strands in the center. Much nicer. How exotic. Charlene, the vivacious, if not somewhat unscrupulous interior decorator, had been bound in what could be viewed as symbolism. Lyman wasn't bound this way, nor were Charlene's ankles, only her wrists. Okay, so Lyman isn't tied with a diamond knot. There's one diamond knot in the scene. Why are these people calling him the diamond knot killer? It's retarded. Investigation would uncover there were fibers of an unknown origin on Lyman's ankles. Oh, I want to mention this for you guys because it's interesting and it makes me wonder a lot. I still, to this day, I kind of wonder, like, what's going on here. Supposedly, some of the holdback evidence from the EAR case that we don't know about, but has leaked out through rumors and so forth, is that he was scattering fibers on the backs of his victims. We don't know what this means or why he was doing it. Was he actually doing it, or is it just one of those pesky rumors that I've found on Reddit and the pro boards? But, as far as I know, mysterious fibers of an unknown origin were found on the back of Manuela Bethune, and also, in this case, it seems. It's possible that they come from the towels that he was ripping up into, you know, shreds and strips. And to give you some justification for the possibility of that, let's say that he tore up towels and he used them as gags, bindings, etc., blindfolds for these two victims also, and then remove them from the scene. Well, tearing up towels would be a hallmark indicator that the East Area rapist had been present, because torn strips of towels were present at the East Area rapes in Sacramento. So it's possible that these fibers come from him just tearing up towels and then removing those towels from the crime scene, and then that's where the whole issue of we don't know where these fibers came from happens, because the towels were removed. Let's keep moving on. Investigation would also uncover that the couple had to have been killed on Thursday night, March 13th, and that their bodies lay undisturbed until young Gary found them on Sunday. This fit with what neighbors claimed. The milk had remained on the back porch. The papers had accumulated on the front porch. How did the killer enter? There was no sign. He must have come in the unlocked front door, but the Smiths always locked the door. All right. Let me ask you guys something. Is there a sliding glass door at this house? I imagine there was. I don't know if anyone else knows. Was there a sliding glass door at this house? If there was, that's how he got in. Especially if you don't find any other evidence of any other stuff. Like if you don't find signs of forced entry, like chiseled door frames or shattered windows or glass cut windows or any of that stuff going on in this crime scene, then how he got in was that he lifted the sliding glass door off of its tracks, pulled it open, then he closed it and put it back on the tracks. And this is very undetectable. Try it yourself. Do you have a sliding glass door at your house? You can test it. Lift your sliding glass door off the tracks. It can be done by anybody with a screwdriver. And you will do no damage to the door frame or no visible damage if you're careful. And then he merely put it back on the tracks, closed the door, and then when he left, he unlocked the front door. And he must have come in the unlocked front door, but the Smiths always locked the door. That doesn't make sense. He came in through the sliding glass door if there was one. When Lyman's brother Don Smith was finally allowed to enter the house days later to take possession, he entered and found a house with walls stained with purple fingerprints and purple liquid dripping down to the floors. The leftover of the forensic people trying to lift fingerprints. So, purple liquid, maybe ninhydrin? Not sure. Or iodine, I guess. Iodine, I've worked with iodine, and it stains everything like orange. Especially once the iodine fully sublimates, it's like reddish orange. But maybe. The kitchen was a shambles with charcoal dusting powder over all the pots and pans. The master bedroom wall over the bed had been cut out. The sheriffs took the piece to an out-of-town expert to see if he could determine by the blood spatters who was hit first. Months passed. As far as the public was now concerned, everything sounded like someone who knew the Smiths had sought revenge. No, the fuck it doesn't. See, this is because you guys are so busy libeling the Smiths. Like, oh, the victims had controversy in their lives. Let's dig all that shit up and then try to link it to their murder. It's just not good, guys. That's not how you do a murder. You don't just make up facts. Like, oh, all this shit he said, she said anyway. If you go to your friends and you be like, tell me about some dramas in your life, they're going to be like, well, this son of a bitch took all my money. And then you go to that guy and you're like, what happened? And he's like, well, that guy gave me all his money and then got mad. It's just he said, she said. No one fucking knows, right? So let's be careful about trying to like build this 20-paragraph libelous portrait of everyone that gets murdered and then like claim that it clearly is because of that. No, it's not. Not much of anything illuminating came out in the newspapers to counter this theory. Yeah, I mean, because you guys have established the narrative with 45 paragraphs of slander. Lyman was well loved. This is for true. Charlene had been captivating. This is undeniable. Then why would someone have killed them? See the contradiction here? Articles were mostly about Lyman and his soon-to-be expected appointment. As far as the newspapers were told, this murder was an incredible mystery. Yeah, basically. Because there is no sensible motive. It's not anything to do with Joe Alsip and his business dealings or any of, all this other bullshit that you've stated about Charlene. Behind the scenes, the detectives were investigating Bud Sloan. He had the physical strength to do this. He had lost lots of money. See how these kind of things happen? Well, this guy lost a lot of money, and he's quite strong. Therefore, see how stupid that is? Charlene's boyfriend, Atwood, was also suspected. Fucking everybody was, I guess. Not sure if they're going to mention Jen Carroll, but she was a suspect, too. He claimed Charlene had come to see him just hours before she was murdered. She said she was going to leave Lyman for him anyway, despite the upcoming appointment. He stressed they were still lovers. He said she took some clothes she had left there after they had come back from their recent San Diego getaway together. Atwood never saw her after that, he said, but he did try to see her. He admitted he watched the house with binoculars that evening from his office in the tallest building in the Ventura on Esplanade Avenue. Okay, so look. You can use this against him too. Well, he's watching the house with binoculars, therefore he killed them. If you apply that same logic to every single person in these two people's lives, you're going to end up with 25 murderers, and they're all in the room together holding a piece of firewood together. It's ridiculous. Lovely. Atwood didn't hide how he pined for Charlene. He admitted he drove by the house Saturday night, and then he tried to call Sunday morning, quite bold. He didn't seem to fear Lyman would answer the phone. Atwood's claims seemed at odds with Charlene's attitude and with her quest for status. Charlene... What the fuck, man? Stop doing that, Quester. Charlene came back to Lyman because she wanted to be a judge's wife. The former deputy sheriff seems to pale by comparison. The lover indeed looked like a good candidate. Jesus Christ. Can we stop? But the lot would fall on Joe Alsop. He was broke now because his business ventures went under and Lyman's half of the pie had only gotten better. His fingerprint was also found on a drinking glass. Well, he must have fucking killed him then. Clearly, he was drinking at the house. He said he had been there the night before and had some Michelob. It didn't help. He had lost too much money and the investigators knew he had been blaming Lyman. So these are terrible investigators, like I said. But there was no arrest, thank God. It wasn't enough. They had to find more. It had to be Alsip. Look how disgusting these detectives are. Disturbing. I don't like them. Because they have found what is essentially nothing and spun it into an entire narrative where Joe Alsip beat these two to death. And not only that, but they're saying they have to find more because it has to be him. That's not how you do an investigation. That's the problem that's going around true crime right now. These detectives are just as bad. Ventura County investigators would not accept there was a connection with the Goleta murder. Why not? Why not? I can blame them. It's terrible fucking detective work, guys. It's awful. Now, whether or not you find a connection to the Goleta murders, that's different. But they could not accept that this was a serial killer. So instead, they go down this rabbit hole. Guys, if Joe Alsip is the murderer, his fingerprint is not, it's either not going to be anywhere or it's going to be everywhere. It's not going to be only on a drinking glass and nowhere else. That is disturbingly stupid. Think about that. Seriously. Okay, so the murderer comes in, he's not wearing gloves, right? He touches a drinking glass and then he puts his gloves on. Or the murderer comes in with gloves, in which case he can't leave his fingerprint on the drinking glass. Or the murderer comes in with no gloves, he puts his finger on the drinking glass, and then everything else. Just bad detective work. This Smith case was right out of the Rockford files. No random wacko looked responsible. Offerman and Manning had been bound, yes, but they had also been shot. The Smiths had not been. Behind the scenes, the Ventura County sheriffs also knew that Charlene had had rough sex or had been raped before she was murdered. So, brilliant detectives, once again, let's pin this on Jen Carroll, who physically cannot rape anyone. It's impossible. I mean, at least not by that definition. Like, she can't phallically penetrate anyone. Okay, let's say that. Technically, yes, you female can, but moving on. Bad detectives. This should be a case study in terrible detective work. It's the worst we've seen. It's like Paul Holes and these guys are best friends. Okay. Deborah Manning had not been raped. The cases didn't seem connected. Even when another bedroom bludgeon double murder occurred far south at Dana Point, Ventura still didn't accept it was by the same nut job. These people are brain dead. They're brain dead. It's shocking. The Ventura murder and the Harrington murder is basically a carbon copy, guys. The only difference is the Harringtons are covered and they're not beaten with wood and the murder weapon is removed from the scene. But it's a carbon copy. And so if they can't even begin to accept the possibility that this case is connected to Harrington's, which came after, but not before the end of the investigation, that's for sure, because this investigation didn't end until 2018. All Ventura investigators knew was that some Sacramento County sheriff named Bevins believed they were all linked. And what a good detective he is. Because he's linked all of these, it seems. I like Jim Bevins so far. Hopefully he doesn't ruin his reputation, which is one of those things that these guys like to do. Murder Inc., do you know if Jim Bevins came in and fucked up his whole reputation after this? Jim Bevins was now alone in the pursuit of the East Area Rapist. He had looked at the Offerman case and the Queen Anne Lane case, that being the botched Goleta one, I believe. Queen Anne had East Area Rapist written all over it. Yes, Offerman and Manning were shot, but the detailed facts also said that Offerman had challenged his attacker. The witnesses to the gunshots made it clear in what sequence they were fired. There was no rape because EAR, if it was him, had to quickly flee, but the bindings, the thermostat in the off position, etc., all pointed to EAR. Okay. True, the Smith case seemed unique of them all. EAR had never used a decorative knot. He didn't use it. At least not directly, at least not purposely. He didn't tie the knot. Man, Quester should know better. If the victim is an interior decorator, and the knot that she's bound with is used by interior decorators, and then never used again, and never used before, why in the hell are we assuming this EAR tied this knot? Nor had he known his victims. He certainly never left any symbolism behind. Well, he knows them in the sense that he knows their professions, he knows their routines, he knows where they live, he knows what time they're home. So even if he doesn't know Charlene Smith, he probably knows where she works, if she works somewhere. He certainly never left any symbolism behind. That diamond knot stood out like a tarantula on angel food, to quote Philip Marlowe. Guys, Ventura probably thought the same, and no one can blame them. It should be noted that it has not been verified whether the diamond knot was already in the drapery cord as a decorative element and not a knot tied by the killer. Well, let's use everyone's favorite Occam's razor here. Okay? Let's try to use logic here, is a better way to put that. It's not tied by the killer. It's already in the drapes. These people are so dumb, it wouldn't surprise me if there was another drapery cord with a diamond knot in it, and they still fucking thought he tied it. It's mind-blowing. Joe Alsip was finally tagged by the DA's office. For what? He had a motive, and there was that fingerprint. Oh my god. Oh my god. The pretrial was lengthy, but it was fortuitous. The details came out. What utter nonsense in the papers. The Smith skin under their bindings did in fact show that they had struggled. Charlene's wrists showed the most. Only her wrists were tied with a decorative knot. Neighbors had heard a shriek, apparently between 2 and 3 a.m., then a muffled scream, then it was silent. The murder must have happened then. The coroner Speth testified that Charlene had had rough sex or rape before she had died. The details of her came out, including Lyman Smith's less than successful business junkets and their living outside their means. Okay, let me point something out to you. So, remember how the guest bedroom bed is in disarray and all this stuff? It's like skewed, like someone has been, quote, jumping up and down on the bed, according to Quester. Let's try to use a little logic again, since apparently nobody in Ventura can do that. If the guest bedroom mattress is skewed, and the evidence shows that Charlene had, quote, rough sex before her death, does it not stand immediately to reason that she was raped in the spare bedroom? Come on, guys. Dude, Ventura is so dumb it hurts. But the DA had nothing on Alsip. As it finally wound down, the longest pretrial in the county's history, it was clear that the DA had jumped the gun. Fuck. Thank God for the court of law. They had Alsip's fingerprint on a glass, the fact he was bitter about Lyman, and the report of a minister who was psychologically unbalanced. What the fuck does that have to do with anything? The case against Alsip was dismissed. Thank God. Joe Alsip, count your lucky stars. Justice worked properly for you this time. The Harrington murder had not yet been linked. Why? Ventura County sheriffs had been blinded with some good reason. No, with no good reason at all. No good reason. They're just dumb, bad detectives. They're jumping to conclusions because they don't know what to do. Because they don't know how to think. That the Smith double murder wasn't random, but premeditated by a friend. There's no good reason for that claim. No, stop. That's bad. Bad detective work. Yet aside from both double murders being done with a bludgeon, it was never found in the Harrington murder. Well, we know what it was. There were 2 identical pieces of evidence found. A cord never tied had been found outstretched. Oh my God, are you serious? Oh my god, are you fucking serious? At the Smith murder, it was 28 inches long. It had never been used, and the killer left it where he had laid it. In the case of the Harringtons, their bindings had been cut from their wrists and some taken, but the unused cord had been left behind. Curious. Clearly the same murderer. What to make of this case? Yes, time has told the remarkable truth. It was EAR. Is it really that surprising? He had become a premeditated murdering Night Stalker. DNA proved Charlene had been raped before she was murdered. Well, aren't we all shocked there? Considering the spare bedroom fucking mattress is all skewed. DNA linked this to the Harrington murder and to 2 others yet to be discussed. More importantly, it linked it to the EAR crimes of East Sacramento and Contra Costa County. By the time this link was made in the 1990s, Richard Ramirez had achieved fame as the Night Stalker, but for these carefully planned and clueless murders, until DNA, there's no fucking cluelessness about this. These were the crimes of the Night Stalker, and normally I don't nitpick people with the benefit of hindsight, but they earned that. This is how the jurisdictions referred to the ghost-like perp. After the DNA link was made and the case reemerged into public light, EAR was then dubbed Original Night Stalker. Not a handy name, but let's continue. Actually, I think it's a great name. And the reason why is it's very descriptive. We'll talk about that in like a short video like I did last time. Why I like the Earons moniker. Because it tells you a bunch of facts. And Golden State Killer doesn't. Once again, what to make of this? Up to a point, the clues lead us in an obvious progression. EAR must have awakened them in a standard way. He ordered Charlene to tie Lyman's wrist behind his back. He probably had the cord on the bed already. She did so. He then tied her wrists with that highly decorate and elaborate drapery cord. No, he didn't. At least not if you're trying to say he tied the fucking knot. He just used it. It's a slip knot. It's just so dumb. He then tied Lyman's ankles, leaving fiber on his ankles from the gloves he was wearing. Is that where we're saying the fibers came from? Is that what it was? Does anyone know? I think it comes from towel blindfolds. But maybe, whatever. In his usual routine, he took Charlene to the spare bedroom and raped her. Again, EAR textbook. Let's fucking lie detect Jen Carroll. Are you dumb? This time, however, it was quite aggressive, leaving the bed quite disheveled. It's almost like he was trying to scream at Ventura that he did this. This would explain why her wrist showed the most bruising as she struggled. After he was done, he took her back to the master bedroom and put her on the bed on her back. He never took her t-shirt off. EAR never showed much interest in breasts. He tied her ankles. EAR probably went outside now and got the log. He came back in. Dark. Whatever terror he now inflicted on them was short-lived, but there were probably no ifs again. He stood on Charlene's side of the bed. The bark from the log was mostly on that side. One other thing tells us he stood over her. She let out a clear shriek and then a second scream that was then muffled. He must have been close enough to put his gloved hand over her mouth quickly. Or the pillow. She must have shrieked when he raised the log and with one deadly stroke bashed Lyman's head in and blood spattered her in the wall. He muffled her mouth and told her to be quiet. Maybe. He hit her more than once and with more force than needed to kill. Perhaps once to knock her out, the others to kill her. EAR pulled the sheets and bedspread up, a macabre sense of order. This was his one last bit of terror. He knew whoever pulled the sheets down would get the scare of their lives. Or he knows that forensically normally covered victims would indicate remorse, and he's trying to make it look like someone who knew them, which Ventura seemed to fall hook, line, and sinker for because they're stupid. EAR didn't ransack much. That probably didn't inflict enough terror anymore. I mean, there's evidence of ransacking. What are you talking about? It's right up here. Remember all the drawers being pulled out and the sofa being all fucked up and all this other stuff? So there's definitely evidence of ransacking. EAR then left, but how did he enter? When did he enter? Was it by a back gate? I would say it was by a sliding glass door. Joan Taylor, a neighbor, was awakened by her Great Dane Saxon at 2 a.m. He led her to the gate that leads to the Smith's property. He did not bark. She heard nothing. She had never experienced this before. The diamond knot. Okay, so this is going to sound like I'm talking because it's not written with the same skillful journalistic prose that Quester normally has. He puts himself saying, I don't like it into the article, and normally you wouldn't write that. You'd write, like, the diamond knot. Confusing or something. You wouldn't say, I don't like it. But, so that's what Quester says. In fact, Quester inserts himself into this paragraph quite a bit. That diamond knot, I don't like it. EAR never showed any symbolism, nor would he. Then he didn't tie the knot, did he? which obviously we should know that. It's too complicated, guys. It's unnecessary. It makes no sense to tie a diamond knot. You would just use a slip knot. Why would you do that? This alone remains the only time. So, are we surprised here that a vivacious... how many times is he going to use that word? If not, somewhat superficial interior decorator was left dead, tied with a decorator's knot. I mean, does it take a fucking genius? Tie with drapery cord. None of the others were tied with this. Okay, so here's why he did that. Let me tell you exactly why EAR started using drapery cords. Because he tried twine and Goleta, and it failed on him. Because twine sucks ass for anything ever in the history of mankind. You can't use it for anything at all, except like packing paper on a box. He tried that, it didn't work. But he knew he couldn't use shoelaces, because if he used shoelaces, we would know it was the East Area Rapist, because that was EAR's little thing. None of the others were tied with this. It seems quite intentional. The rifled sofa cushion suggests that EAR had planted the drapery cord the days before underneath and then retrieved it after he entered. I don't understand why he would do that. I don't buy that. I don't think that's what it is. The rifled sofa cushions suggest that he's using the Thunderbird Place incident to project what he thinks happened. And I'm not completely convinced that EAR actually did that crime. Unless there is a, it's possible that he stashed ligatures under the Thunderbird Place residence's couch cushions, but I think it's more likely that those two people just wanted to get in the news, and so they did that whole thing. I don't know. Maybe it's the case, but we'll never know if D'Angelo really put the rope under the Thunderbird Place couch cushions. And so Quester is trying to project that information into this crime. I'm not convinced that that's why those couch cushions have been rifled. There might be another reason, and we may never know that reason. He went to a lot of trouble here. I would like to say that this knot is the ultimate clue, that it tells us... I wish you wouldn't do that. It tells us EAR had some acquaintance with her, close or from some distance, because he's the Night Stalker. So obviously he knows what she does for a living. He's been stalking them for God knows how long. And knew she was a free-living interior decorator with status quest. Again, it has never been established in public that the knot was not already in the cord. EAR may not have tied it. This must be borne in mind. Of course he didn't tie it. It's the dumbest theory I've ever heard in my entire fucking life. Oh, he broke into an interior decorator's house and then an interior decorating knot was used. It's because it's from the house. But there are those damned cats. What the fuck does that have to do with the knot? If EAR had any acquaintanceship, he would not have needed to follow those cats from the Santa Paula Freeway and then expand to the nearest community to prowl it. Yet he did. Yep, exactly. He doesn't know them. He's not like friends with them. Though Lyman Smith's connection to Sacramento is a little bit interesting. I think that's a coincidence. Murder Inc. might have some information for us on associates of Lyman Smith that might have been murdered, raped, or attacked prior to this crime or after it. After it wouldn't really be as indicative of anything to me as would be before. If Lyman Smith's neighbor got, like bludgeoned to death with like a pipe wrench before Lyman Smith was killed, and this happened in Sacramento, then I would be like, huh, he must have followed Lyman Smith from Sacramento. It's also possible that Lyman Smith is involved in politics, therefore from Sacramento, and just so happens to be that EAR is also from Sacramento, and because he killed so many fucking people, eventually a coincidence is going to show up, and we're going to be like, oh gosh, what's that? It could just be nothing. Yet he did. The community seems one he picked by his usual methods of long-distance roaming. The killing thus seems random. She was lovely, had long hair, which he liked, and the house was in perfect position to be struck. Then he probably doesn't know them. And then Quester derps. He says, then why the knot? Because it was in the fucking curtains already? Why only here? Why the symbolism? Because it was in the fucking curtains already? Had it merely been from seeing the decor of the house? From reading her mail or something? Yeah, probably. You usually did crazy shit like that. But how would he know that a lanyard is also a decorator's knot? So he knew how to tie a lanyard. How can you fucking conclude that? You just said 30 seconds ago that it's never been confirmed he tied the knot, and it's pretty fucking obvious that he didn't. So yes, he probably had learned how to tie this kind of knot in the Navy. Maybe, I don't fucking know. He was in the Navy, we know that. So maybe they taught him how to tie a fucking diamond knot, we don't know. But he probably didn't tie it. I would say there's such a high chance that he didn't tie that fucking knot. Yes, Kid Freshy, I do. I actually think that Joseph D'Angelo gets horny looking at maps of neighborhoods. I'm not kidding you. Because look at the punishment map. Look how, like, insane and maniacal it is. This guy's, like, drawing a neighborhood, and as it goes from down towards the bottom, it gets more and more fucked off. Yeah, I think he's horny about neighborhoods. Then why the knot? Why only here? Why the symbolism? Oh, we just saw that. But he also knew it was a decorator's knot. No, he didn't. Guys, come on, Quester. Come on, dude. There's a little more arcane information. He also saw fit to use it, along with exotic drapery cord, to use it only on her, symbols of her profession. Or it's an accident. Guys, it could literally be an accident, and this whole thing is made up bullshit. People are always romanticizing these brutal fucking murders, and they're like, oh, maybe he was doing symbolism. Like, maybe. But even if he was, it doesn't really mean shit. And he certainly shouldn't be called the Diamond Knot Killer. That's retarded. Gilding the lily. This is like leaving 30 pieces of silver. But no, it's not. It could literally be an accident. You don't even know. You have no idea if it's an accident or not. El Malabar in High Point Drive, right off El Malabar, there is an empty corridor to undeveloped land. Here, that Pontiac had parked. Where's the house? Which one's the house? Let's find it. So, because Quester likes to do that too. He always shows us a giant map with like 45 houses, and he's like, here's the house. And it's like, which one? Okay, so this is L-shaped. It has an inclined driveway to it. The field is up and to the left. Let's see if we can find the crime scene in this picture. I reckon it's this one right here. Oh my god, the detectives are fucking retarded. It's obviously the East Area Rapist. Look at this crime scene. He came from this field. He came through this corridor. It's literally the same shit at every single fucking crime scene. Okay. Technically, the Smith house was considered a corner lot. Okay, so it's got to be this one right here. That's my guess. Could be wrong on that, though. Driveway on the right. That's a tricky one. But either way, he came from the corridor. We know that for sure, and Ventura's too dumb to figure that one out. Like with Queen Anne Lane, the Smith home is next to a house with a deep driveway. Okay, we got it. So that's the house right here. But I don't think he came from that driveway. I think he came from over here on the right, because he's not going to want to pass through the front doors of 3 separate houses. He's going to come from the right here. Anyway, irrelevant. Technically, the Smith house was considered a corner lot. This would prove true of the Harrington house as well. Aside from his prowling M.O., EAR changed much of his M.O. inside. Not really. Just not really. The collective evidence says this was merely random. EAR narrowed in on the community via the cats and prowled it. This seems underscored by the fact that random prowlings had been noted both before and strangely after the Smith murders. On March 8th, for instance, a neighbor had heard someone working on the lock of her bathroom window. Then the invisible hand moved it back and forth a few times. In one case, on March 18th, 2 days after the bodies were found, one neighbor heard some unusual sounds outside his infant's window. He went outside and checked but found nobody, but in daytime he checked again and found the window had a small hole cut in it by the lock. Oh my god. Isn't that creepy? 2 days after the bodies were found and he's still prowling the neighborhood? This guy is fucking insane. This was EAR's style. The latter incident is especially suggestive of EAR. We've never seen this level of brazenness ever in the history of mankind, guys. Ever before. This is mind-blowingly insane. 2 days after they find the Smiths' bodies and this guy is still prowling the neighborhood? Are you fucking kidding me? But it is remarkable. He was still prowling so close to the time after the bodies have been found. Yeah, I know it is. Holy shit. His MO was to prowl the community extensively, selecting more than one potential victim, but after he struck his first victim there, he cooled off until he returned weeks or months later. He didn't stalk again right after. Actually, sometimes he does. I believe we saw that in Goleta, didn't we? This is also surprising considering EAR was no longer striking that close together. He didn't strike after Queen Anne Lane for about 2 months, then after Avenida Pequena here in March over 2 months later. 2 days after the bodies had been found, 5 days after the murder, and he seems to be at it again if the homeowner is to be believed. I believe them. I think this guy's fucking completely insane. Yet EAR would not strike again until the end of August, and this would be far away. Quite a dearth. Yeah, I guess we're going to get into Harrington's next, and I've been to that crime scene, so I'll be able to give you guys some insight as we go. And the question to be answered is, did EAR intend to kill the Smiths? Was this premeditated? With the Offerman murder, it is hard to say. Offerman got loose and probably made a play for the EAR. EAR shot him and then executed Manning and fled, but here it is different. The victims lay in bed, and each was hit with a blow to the head. No one fought back. EAR remained in control. This was his first rape since Contra Costa County. He raped Charlene aggressively in a bed and not in the living room. Yeah, he does that. Many contrasts, but it now sounds premeditated. Offerman Manning does not. He enjoyed his new thrill. In Sudden Terror, Lieutenant Larry Crompton says that Charlene was hit perhaps more than once. Much later, Florida profile Leslie D'Ambrosia was given information on the Smith, Harrington, and the Irvine cases of Bethune and Cruz for comparison to form a profile. From what she had been told, she wrote, the offender used a great deal of physical force when he bludgeoned the female victims. The women suffered crushing blows to their heads resulting from beatings with blunt force instruments. The amount of force used by the offender was extreme, especially considering that they were bound and compliant and therefore unable to resist their attacker. The behavior of the victims during the assaults did not cause the offender to increase the amount of force used because they were not resistant. More force was used than necessary to kill the victims. If that is true of the Smith case, the EAR came to kill. Yeah, he totally came to kill, guys. For sure. From this point, he would have to start developing his murder MO, which he began to do. An interesting coincidence is that EAR had shown some reticence to rape victim 9, and in fact, he didn't, after she admitted that she had attended San Juan High School. Lyman Smith had also graduated from San Juan High School in 1954. Though this is long before EAR was afoot, it is a curious coincidence. Yeah, that's the second thing that ties EAR to Lyman Smith, which is kind of interesting. It could literally just be all coincidence, guys. We don't know. Whatever the answer may be, this began his career of murder by bludgeoning to death. He would now follow a new modus operandi, but it would still ride piggyback on his cat burglar skills to silently prowl a community and then gain entrance. Wow. So this is an insane fucking crime. Close the window capture. I'm going to close this one a little earlier than usual. I've been kind of doing this thing where I'll read the Quester Files article and then I'll just fucking ramble for the next hour, and I think that's a little bit not professional. Especially when people are going to look into this playlist and then be like, oh, let me hear the original Night Stalker case. And like half of it is my bullshit. So let's try not to do that right now. But I want to mention with you guys that that Ventura has the worst detectives in the entire world, guys. They're awful. All right. And with that being said, next time we appear here, we're going to be talking about the Harringtons. I've been to that crime scene. It's from my hometown. Let's see here. Where are we here? Laguna Niguel. So I was born in Mission Viejo Hospital and grew up in Aliso Viejo, so it's about 6 miles away from this crime scene. I've been to this crime scene once. And what was interesting, I'll talk about it next time, but there's actually not much to see there. Hello, BB. I see your chat. And, yeah, we'll talk Harringtons next, and then I'll have some